We all know that Boeing has a lot of trouble, but for them to suddenly, out of the blue, very randomly too, cut 17,000 jobs is a big deal. Because Boeing is one of the biggest employers in the US. This is kind of like one of our last big industrial companies, right? We've already lost most of the shipbuilding companies. We don't really make rail anymore. And Boeing is like one of those like very old school companies in the US that still cranks out, enormous amounts of airplanes. Boeing plans to cut 10% of its entire workforce. It's now confirmed. About 17,000 people will be let loose. Manufacturer will also delay the launch of its new 777X wide-body planes until 2026. Factory strike is almost a month old, and tensions between the company and the union is on the rise. Right now, Boeing is having some of the biggest losses ever. If you ever checked out the Boeing stock, it's actually kind of sad. If you look at the stock price, it's like around $150, whereas all-time high used to be $380. And in the past year, Boeing has done it terribly. Just last year in December, the stock price was $260, almost hitting $300. People thought Boeing finally turned itself around, but when earnings came out, it was terrible. Now Boeing stock is $149. This is one of the worst prices I've ever seen for Boeing. In the past 5 years, it's about to hit all-time low prices. We're talking about hitting like pandemic level prices, where people are locked in their houses and not even traveling. One of the biggest issues that Boeing is facing is the strikes, because the unions want more money, but Boeing is losing capital. Boeing said they'll increase pay by X amount, but the unions aren't exactly happy. Right now, Boeing is just simply burning cash. The unions are just like, hey, you gotta pay us more. Massive strike. And a lot of these strikes are extremely contagious. A few hundred people striking will eventually become thousands and tens of thousands. We're already seeing Boeing failing in a lot of things, including that space capsule that was supposed to get the NASA astronauts down. Eventually, NASA straight up just told SpaceX to do it. Boeing is just taking L's and L's in the past couple years, and it just seems like the company just can't catch a break. If you look at some of the revenue drops by Boeing, they just keep getting worse. Boeing reports first revenue drop in 7 quarters as deliveries decline. And in the most recent report, it's also pretty bad. We're also seeing increasing competition from China as well. If you ever see their 919 airplane, and they may actually dominate the southeastern area of Asia. So we're seeing major competition like Airbus coming out as well. But at the end of the day, it's just that not a lot of airlines are buying airplanes. Air travel is high, but not as high as before. Even Airbus is logging in sharp profit drops after supply chain setbacks. Airbus, they're a great company. Engineers run it. And so far, Airbus is taking a lot of wins. But even Airbus is experiencing supply chain issues. They're experiencing some companies not ordering as many planes as before. And it's just getting kind of difficult. Right now, in the airplane manufacturing business, it's very hard to make money. And given the fact that Boeing is doing absolutely terribly, and certain airlines actually say that they'll never buy Boeing airplanes, just shows you how bad the stock and the company is doing. Right now, we don't really know what's going to happen to Boeing, but I could tell you it's not looking so hot. Right now, Americans aren't really spending much on vacations either. When Americans aren't spending vacations, it's a big deal because this country has some of the highest paying individuals when compared to the rest of the world, and our spending is a lot bigger than other countries. Sure, China has like 1.3 billion people, but our spending is way more. Travel is too expensive right now, says most Americans. Americans are spending less trips or just skipping trips altogether. This summer's vacation was very low. In fact, almost as low as during the pandemic, because many Americans are kind of scared that they might be getting laid off, which isn't so surprising because Boeing is literally laying off like 17,000 people. And when you lay off that many people, it freaks people out and people start hogging money. We're finally seeing Americans being a lot more frugal than before, and that's because of fear of losing their jobs. And if you look into what the feds are doing, it's not going to save Boeing either, because yes, they've dropped interest rates by 50 basis points, but the feds have kind of gave out a lot of signs that they don't really want to decrease rates too quickly. They want to keep a high interest rate environment for as long as possible. So there you go. That's also another very difficult thing for Boeing to do. These big corporations can't even get money. They can't even get loans because it's so expensive. And when interest rates are this high, most companies don't want to take loans. They just cut employees. And now 17,000 jobs are suddenly lost. This is not great, especially it's the official report by Boeing in the most recent announcement. Can Boeing crawl back? We're not really sure. Let's see what happens next in the job market.